Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video. If you've spent any time on photography forums, you've probably heard people say things like, never shoot this camera at ISO 500, or always use ISO 400 because that's the native ISO. Some photographers will even choose very specific ISO values because they believe those settings produce cleaner images or better dynamic range. But does any of that actually matter? And if your camera has something called dual native ISO, should you be deliberately changing your ISO settings to take advantage of it? Today, we're going to find out. And stay to the end to see how I will change my ISO settings in real life in my photography based on my findings. My name is Simon D'Entremont and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. Okay, to understand these questions, we first need to understand that ISO doesn't change how much light the sensor captures. Instead, ISO controls how strongly the electrical signal coming from the sensor is amplified before it's converted into the image you see. In many cameras, as you increase the ISO, the camera simply applies more amplification to that signal. The darker the original image, the more amplification it needs, i.e. a higher ISO. That's why high ISO images are noisy. It needed lots of amplification, meaning it was very dark to start with, also meaning that it had a poor signal to noise ratio, making it noisy. Now sensors have a native ISO, the place at which little to no amplification is needed, like ISO 100. The image has lots of light, doesn't need amplification, and has low noise. Check. But some sensors are designed with two different amplification pathways, each optimized for a different range of brightness levels. At lower ISOs, the camera uses one amplification circuit designed to preserve maximum dynamic range in bright scenes. Then at a certain ISO, it may switch to a second amplification circuit that applies a different amount of gain before the signal is read out. These amplifiers are usually analog, before the analog to digital conversion, which converts electrical signals to zeros and ones, takes place. The advantage is that the second circuit can reduce read noise, allowing shadow detail to be recorded more cleanly at higher ISOs than would otherwise be possible. Now, why does this work? You see, every electronic system introduces a little bit of noise. The signal coming from the sensor has to travel through amplifiers, converters, and other circuitry before it becomes a digital image. If the signal is very weak, that electronic noise can become a significant part of the final image. Now imagine you're trying to record a quiet speaker with a microphone, like me speaking very softly into my mic, which I've turned down to a gain of 2. If I record the quiet signal and then turn up the volume afterwards so you can hear it, I'll be amplifying both the voice and the background noise and hiss. But if I use a cleaner microphone signal by raising my mic gain and amplifying my voice before the noisy electronics are introduced, the signal of my voice can stand out more clearly relative to the background noise and hiss. A dual native ISO system works in a similar way. It boosts the sensor signal earlier in the process so that downstream electronic noise has less impact on the final image. On a graph of read noise, this one is from photons to photos, this often appears as a sudden drop rather than a gradual change, which is one of the clues that a gain switch event may be taking place. Many modern sensors are actually more accurately described as having dual conversion gain rather than dual native ISO. At a certain ISO, the sensor switches from a low conversion gain mode to a high conversion gain mode. High conversion gain effectively produces a larger voltage change for each electron collected, which reduces the impact of downstream read noise. If we look at several cameras from Sony, Nikon, Canon here, we can see that they all exhibit this phenomena of a drop in read noise between ISO 300 to 500. Also, if we look at charts of measured dynamic range, we also see a small change in the dynamic range with a slight improvement at ISO 500 over 400, for example, in this case. This leaves us with a question. Should we purposefully adjust our ISO so that we can benefit from this behavior? For example, on my Canon R5 Mark II, will it produce better images at the second native ISO, ISO 500 in this case, than a slightly lower ISO, 400, even if the ISO is higher. Let's look at some test shots to see. Here my Canon R5 Mark II. If we look at this comparison at a series of properly exposed photos, what do we see? Let's start with ISO 100 on the left, and we go through the ISOs to see how much noise we see on the right. Zoomed in at 200%, which is way more than any viewer of your photo would ever see. This is a science experiment at this point. 125, 160, 200, 250, 320, 400, 500, 640, 800, 1000, 1250. I'd say that only at 800 or 1000 can I see some difference. What about ISO 400 on the left, 500 on the right? This is where the conversion looks like it takes place. Can we see a difference? I can't. There's no scenario at these lower ISOs where I can discern a change of ISO of 1/3 of a stop. So for noise performance at these low ISOs and well-lit photos, I can't see a difference, even at 200% zoom. And even if you could see a small difference at 200%, at regular viewing distances, it would be indiscernible. Now what's going on here? The charts say that there's a measurable difference between ISO 400 and 500, but there's a but. Another important caveat is the following. This chart is about read noise, the noise caused by the electronics. It does not include shot noise, which comes from the random arrival of photons themselves. In daytime photography, as opposed to astrophotography, for example, shot noise is usually much larger than read noise. So if the total noise is this much, but it's made up of 10 times more shot noise than read noise, cutting read noise by 25% is only cutting the total noise by 2.5%. So I tested the total noise from ISO 100 to 6400 on my camera, and using Photoshop statistics, I created the following noise chart showing the noise in images at those ISOs. As you can see, it's a gradual increase with no critical change at ISO 400 and 500. Now, is there a way to test read noise and have less interference from shot noise? Yes, we can. We can underexpose the photos, and that way shot noise is a smaller proportion of the noise compared to read noise than before. Shot noise is probably still the dominant noise, but by less of a margin than before. Let's look at these photos underexposed 4 stops and raised in exposure in Lightroom. ISO 100 on the left. If we cycle through the various ISOs, we can see a general trend that when I go to higher ISOs on the right, we can see that the noise gets worse. Now let's compare ISO 400 to 500, 640, 800, and 1000, for example. In this, it appears that I can see just a small improvement at ISO 500 over 400. Again at 640, but at 800 and 1000 they appear to be no better and maybe a bit worse. That's using my eyeball test. What does the quantitative tell me? With a little Photoshop action, and voila, by underexposing we can indeed see a drop off at 500, with 500, 640, and even 800 a bit better than 400 for read noise. Now what about dynamic range? Let's look at some shadow recovery to see if the dynamic range has changed. And some of you with astute scientific senses might be saying, for dynamic range, should you test both highlight recovery and shadow recovery? Actually, for most modern cameras, the maximum signal level that can be captured is essentially fixed, and most dynamic range changes come from changes in the noise floor, the darker parts of the image, rather than changes in the clipping point. So the upper cutoff point, the full well depth, the point at which pixels can't hold any more information, remains the same at various ISOs. It's the noise floor that rises, making for less dynamic range. The proof? I shot my camera at 4 stops overexposed at ISO 100 to 6400 to see if I could see a pattern to when the clipping would begin. The results? Not enough changes in clipping point to see any good pattern. Just random variations caused by metering fluctuations in the camera, for example. But now let's look at shadow recovery for dynamic range. I took a number of backlit shots, badly underexposed, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stops under. What I'm trying to see is where does the noise floor overwhelm the details in the photo such that you can't tell the details from the noise. I underexposed various ISOs, including 400 and 500, to see if I can find a crossover point. Here's where I thought the critical point was. At ISO 400, on the right, underexposed 4 stops, the black square is almost invisible in the black frame. The noise has basically overtaken the image data. On the left, the ISO 500 image, also underexposed 4 stops, looks better, and you can still discern the black frame of the color checker compared to the black square. Now when I change the image on the right to be the ISO 400 shot to be underexposed 3 stops, it looks quite similar to ISO 500 underexposed 4 stops. The corollary here, and this is very rough science here, is that ISO 500 has better dynamic range than ISO 400 in low light conditions. Let's look at some fancy math, which measures about 1/6 of a stop improvement. That corroborates somewhat what the photons to photos chart shows us, but to a lesser degree. So ISO 500 has about 12% higher signal to noise ratio and is an improvement in shadow recovery. So what does this all mean to you in real life? Should you worry about and purposefully use a second base ISO in a dual native ISO camera? First, in normal daytime photography, none of this will have a significant impact on the quality of your image. Any read noise improvement between a second native ISO and adjacent ISOs is so small and overwhelmed by shot noise and other variables that you'll never tell them apart. They're a handy tool for the camera to have to maximize performance, but you don't need to do anything differently. Secondly, if you mostly shoot at very low ISOs, like a landscape photographer who uses a tripod and base ISO all the time, or a wildlife photographer like me who shoots at very high ISOs like 1000 and above all the time, none of this matters, even in the most extreme situations. At low ISOs, images are so clean that 5% less noise is meaningless, and at higher ISOs, we're above all this switching of native ISOs anyway. So when would this matter? I can actually only think of one scenario that I would use this knowledge to pick a specific ISO. I usually shoot Milky Way shots on a tripod, ISO 1600 to 6400, so this wouldn't matter then. But on a star tracker or telescope mount, you can shoot longer exposures at lower ISO, maybe ISO 400 to 800. In this situation where the image is really dark and you want the best image quality, I can see using ISO 500, what appears to be the second native ISO, to get the best image quality over ISO 400. But let's face it, that is a niche example. In general, just go out and shoot and focus on finding amazing scenes, amazing subjects, and getting great compositions. And don't worry about nitpicking ISOs. Just make sure you don't use shutter speeds and apertures that deprive your sensor of too much light and drive the noise up and your ISO significantly higher. In the real world, no one cares what ISO you used, they just want to see good photos. If you like all this talk about noise and how ISO works, I have a whole video on that which you can see right here. I hope you can use these tips to go out your very next outing and take your own unique and amazing photos. I know you can do it.